It's like handing over five four-star generals of the Taliban. That's what senior military officials reportedly told President Obama about the Bergdahl trade before it took place. So why would the White House go ahead and make the deal anyway? Joining us now is the author of Lights Out, Islam, Free Speech, and the Twilight of the West, columnist and best-selling author, Mark Steyn. Mark, thanks for joining us this morning. So this seems not only like a really bad idea for the country, but also really dumb. What was the point, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's a deal at all. I think, in a sense, the Bergdahl end of it is a distraction. He's the pretext. He's what Hitchcock in his movies used to call the MacGuffin. He's the idea that there is some kind of deal, but in fact there is no deal. It's a straightforward release of five of the world's most dangerous and murderous and bloody war criminals back out onto the world scene without getting anything worthwhile back in return. So there is no deal. It's a straightforward release of the Taliban's best guys on the Taliban's terms.
But why? I mean, I agree with your characterization completely, but why would the president want to do something like that? What's in it for him?
Well, because I think his priority between now and the end of his term is to get himself back on side with the Democratic Party's left-wing base. And that means the anti-war left, and that means the people for whom Gitmo, which is the most luxurious prison camp in the world. It's the only death camp where people put on weight. These guys, these five guys are going back far porkier, far more bulked up than they were when they entered. They're treated very lavishly there, but people have gotten the idea that it's some kind of prison camp, it's some kind of death camp. He came in proposing to close Gitmo, and he's going to close Gitmo, even if it means releasing war criminals wanted by the United Nations out onto the world stage again. Because closing a prison camp is more important to the left wing in this country than winning a war, and that's actually the problem.
So now we're hearing from the New York Times, which is not strictly speaking part of the White House communications operation, but I would say a first cousin.
Not strictly.
Not strictly. that the real problem here were the other men in Bergdahl's unit. They were so undisciplined and flaky that basically they drove him out of the post. They forced him to desert and cross over to enemy lines. What's that? Why attack them?
Yeah, I mean, this to me is actually offensive. Yesterday, there's a bunch of nonagenarians over on the north coast of France. Guys who came in, landed by glider shortly after midnight on Pegasus Bridge behind German lines at a bridge that the Germans had booby-trapped, and nobody made excuses for them. Those guys all had to perform. And the idea that somehow the military created the conditions in which this flake took to sort of wandering around talking to the fairies in the twilight of the Hindu Kush is disreputable even by the New York Times' terms. The fact is, desertion in war is a serious business. And the idea that you know, Obama's line in Brussels, we leave nobody behind. This guy left America behind.
Exactly.
And throughout all of human history, that's been very clear what a deserter is and what the penalty for desertion is. And Obama created this Rose Garden ceremony, in effect, as cover for loosing these five killers onto the world, and that's why they went around, Susan Rice and all the rest of it, trying to dress him up as some kind of war hero who was captured on the battlefield, as Susan Rice absurdly said, because they needed the pretext for what is, in effect, an abject surrender to the Taliban on the Taliban's terms.
Their version of honor and distinction. Mark Steyn, thanks a lot for coming on this morning.
Absolutely.